Oh yeah, the token bow in the background.
The bow?
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh yeah. I got that's where I hang it when I'm done shooting, because if it's in a case, it doesn't get touched very much.
That's very true. That's
I'm
very
like,
true.
dang, I got to get this thing in action.
All right, we're ready. We're gonna go
bad.
mute it up.
Let me go here, and then I'll just exit out, and we'll bring you in.
Okay.
Archery hunters, listen up. If you find yourself in the heart of King County, do yourself a favor and stop in at Rock Creek Archery, located in Tukwila. They have everything you need if you're just beginning to the sport or you've been shooting for 20 years, even an indoor shooting range. Or check them out at rockcreekarchery.com.
This section of the broadcast is brought to you by Burpaw, burpaw.com.
Use Ridge15 at checkout to receive a sweet discount.
Hey everybody, if you are looking for a game call that is elk, turkey, deer, predator calls, waterfowl calls, we highly recommend PhillipsGameCalls.com. Professional grade game calls made for every hunter.
Welcome back to the Ridgeline Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Phelps Game Calls, with your hosts, David Crane and David Sandana. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing things a little different. If you've been watching, you can see we've upgraded a couple things. We have this screen here. It's a little bigger than the last time. And we have integrated into our broadcast. I guess we're going to have a host on the screen for the first time ever.
Yeah, so we
feel like we accomplished something here today.
Yeah, that's right. We integrated Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes, we're now with the future.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So today our host is in the state of Hawaii. And
well, she's here.
There she is. We just brought her in.
No, she's here in Washington.
Oh, she's joining us. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to get used to this. So, if you could introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, my name is Marina Treese, and I'm a Pacific Northwest native. I actually split time between Washington and Hawaii, Maui specifically. I'm currently back in the Pacific Northwest for the winter and prepping to go back to Maui here in the spring as rut is coming up for the axis deer. And so I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I kind of traveled around quite a bit, lived in a bunch of different states, Washington, Idaho, and Colorado and Arizona, and then ended up on a one-way ticket to Hawaii about 12 years ago. And the island kept me for a very long time, and it was an amazing trip. And here I am now kind of figuring out how to navigate split time between the two. I own and manage 3 different businesses currently. The first of which has kind of been my bread and butter for a long time, is a horsemanship business. I've worked with horses since I was a little kid, and that's kind of what sustained me initially out in Hawaii. And then I ended up going back to school for sustainability and got into archery hunting and got really involved with axis deer management. And so then I kind of started my other 2 businesses, which are Axis Sustainability and Mountain Wanderers Designs. Axis Sustainability is a consulting business and offers liaison services. Basically, for example, like one of the projects I'm working on right now is about connecting hunters with landowners for access to be able to hunt in the islands. And that includes locals and non-residents that come in. And then for Mountain Wanderers Designs, part of sustainability for me is definitely utilize every part of the animal that you can. If you're going to harvest an animal, yes, the meat is of course delicious, but what else can you use the animal for? And so I started tanning hides, and then I was like, well, what can I make with these hides? So I do a bunch of leather craftsmanship with the hand tanned hides, and yeah, that's kind of my story. And now I get to do the split time. And
so you don't do much.
No, not at all. I don't like to be busy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I feel your pain on that. I have a business, and it's been a long time, and so people don't really realize how much time you put into it and all the things you're doing. But I have a lot of questions.
Yes, please.
Starting with that one-way trip to Hawaii. It's like I'm like so a little bit of what I thought in my head. A friend of mine, he was like, "Yeah, my brother, he went to Bali." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." He's like, "You stayed for 7 months." I'm like, "How do you stay in Bali for 7 months?" And he just he went over there and he's surfing, and he's like, "Man, it was so cool. I just like bought a little moped and started going towards Vietnam. And when I got to China, I turned back around and came back south." And he like did the whole country and on this moped, and nobody even stopped him or asked him a question. So I imagine your story was like in my head. It was like she's just out there surfing, enjoying life, grabbing a conch shell, talking to who's that guy on the Disney dude, the superhero, the Disney guy. Anyhow,
Oh yeah,
that's my head.
yeah.
I got little girls in Disney is everything. So,
Moana.
Moana, yeah,
Yeah, Maui.
Maui, yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, how about
Yeah.
that one-way ticket?
Yeah, so I guess the feral thing is probably pretty accurate. I started out, I kind of both my parents were self-employed, and so the typical 9 to 5 wasn't going to be my thing. My dad was in construction management, and my mom was in environmental planning, and so it was kind of I loved the outdoors, and I also knew that I wanted to do something with business. And so I kind of had to go find myself and figure out what I was going to do. And I was working a lot, and I had a good friend of mine that was like, you need to just take a break, like go just exist for a little bit. You should go to Maui. And I'd heard about it, and I was like, I don't know, it seems real touristy. And she's like, just go. And I went for 2 weeks, and I came back, and I looked at her, and she looks at me and she goes, no. And 3 weeks later, I packed up everything I owned and bought that one-way ticket, and out to Maui I went. And, it's really interesting. The island is funny, in a way that like people will say, if the island wants you, it'll take you in. And if it doesn't want you, it'll chew you up and spit you out. And, there've been many times where that could have happened, and the opportunities just kept happening and doors opening. And I think, it's very much a giving place. Like if you go there to be able to give back, and you go with the intent of like, what can I do to help? That helps a lot. And I started out working at a horse ranch out there. And then I worked at Humane Society for a long time. I was a vet tech for many years before going out, so it was kind of an easy transition. And that's kind of part of where I got the start in the invasive species management. As they do a lot of there was a big feral cat problem out there, and so they do a lot of trap, neuter, or spay and release. And so that helps with invasive species management. And that kind of tied me into the deer. And then, I knew when I was living out there, I moved kind of all over the island. I started on the south side, then I went back to school for sustainability. And then, I was living kind of on the west side, and I knew I was like, once I really get this, I want to go, I call it upcountry.
Mm-hmm.
And the place that I have is about 5,000 feet from sea level. And it's actually a lot closer in climate to the Pacific Northwest. It freezes in the winter, and yeah, it's amazing. Like it'll be sunshine in the mornings, and then the clouds come in midday, and it's like, 50s to 65 or so. It's just like perfect. And that's where all the deer are. So it ended up being a really
natural,
ideal situation. Yeah.
So what is a trail cat? You said, would you say trail cat or feral cat?
Feral cat.
Feral cat.
Feral cat. Okay. I was like, dang, I gotta know about these trail cats. That's what.
No, actually,
that's next on my list right there. Sound like they need help.
It's interesting. Hawaii actually, one of the things that's very unique about it is that there aren't really predators out there. There are no big game mammals for sure. The largest like carnivorous thing are mongoose. And the mongoose were actually introduced to take out rats, but one's nocturnal and one's diurnal, and so they didn't really cross
work
paths.
out. Yeah.
Rats are hanging out like, what's the problem with this place? This is great. Mongoose over there starving to death, looking like a...
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's why the deer and the pigs have just taken off, right? Because there's nothing managing them at all.
Yeah.
except for people. And then, they're smart. They know. They just go to private land, and they're a lot safer when they do that.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
you were a vet tech here,
Mm-hmm.
and then you went there, and your friend said, no, 2 weeks isn't enough. And I'll say the same thing. I went there for 7 days.
Yeah.
That was not enough.
I didn't want to leave. I was like,
yeah.
What? I guess.
Well, she was jealous. She wanted to come. She was like, no, you're not going to leave me now. And I was like, well.
Yeah, well, don't got money to come back, so I'm good. Kind of narrows down your options. Either you sink or swim at that point. You have your one-way ticket. Probably could have bought another ticket, but you don't plan on coming back, so why do it?
Oh, and it's just, it's such a special place out there. I guess my parents must have destined me to be around the water too with my name. So I kind of grew up here in the Pacific Northwest on the water, and, being there, I worked as a naturalist and outreach specialist at the Ocean Center. They have there, and they do a lot of habitat restoration and like coral transplanting, and they do a lot of education based, conservation. And it's a huge asset, because I think a lot of times people come out to the islands and they really want to enjoy and see the, fish and see the, whales and the beautiful water and all these things, but they don't understand that, when Maui has millions of people every year that come out, you have an opportunity to be able to educate people and teach them, don't use, aerosol sunscreen, or like use reef safe sunscreen, or if you're going to go swimming, go in the mornings, because it's going to be a lot more likely that you'll see things without getting sunburned. And I think a lot of it's just teaching people.
Yeah, the first time I ever got burned was in Hawaii. I've never been burned in my life. I kind of naturally have like dark skin, and I'd never been burnt that bad in my life.
No, it happened.
It was the first. I was 25 years old.
Oh.
I'd never been burned, and I've been all over the place.
Critter.
Yeah, I was like, "What's going on?" My wife's like, "You're burned." I was like, "What is that?" I was freaking out. I didn't know what was going on.
So I went to Hawaii, and a lot of those things you're talking about with the reef safe sunscreen, and everybody wants to snorkel, right? I got there. I was like,
you went to the ABC store?
I'm going to go snorkeling.
Oh, yeah.
Grab your store.
Well, we walked down Kapiolani Parkway and right down to Waikiki Boulevard. We were right there in downtown Oahu. And so I thought, I'm going snorkeling. I'm going to, hopefully I see some of these cool fish. But as soon as I put my head in the water, there's just fish everywhere. Surprisingly, there's like every square foot has a fish in it almost.
Yeah.
I was like, holy smokes. So here I go, going out. Didn't realize that the sun would reflect off the bottom and get your underside sunburned. Because I had my back covered. I had nothing up here. I was like, I'm going to be face down. I don't have to worry about it. No, the sunscreen works two ways. Or the sun will hit the bottom and get you from the bottom. So if you go to Hawaii, make sure you get your front covered good. Because even if you're face down, that sun works, goes through water, back up and get you. And that's like a magnifying glass burn there. That's the worst.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Animals, like a lot of the sea life, actually, it's called counter shading. Basically, they're real dark on the top part of their body and they're real light on the underside. And that's exactly what you're saying. So if something looks at them from, down below, and they look up and they see it real light because it matches what the sky above is going to be, or if they look from above and they look down and it's dark, they're not going to be able to see it as well. So it allows them to camouflage better too.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So I did a couple of years of marine biology back in the day,
Oh, yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's cool. I'm going to be all about ocean life and stuff. And here I am, long time later, I just work on houses. I spent all day on a roof today getting wind burned. And so,
man.
Yeah, we'd take a chimney out. But learn about all that stuff and the coral and all that. It's fascinating to me how they work and germinate and,
the whole island. Everything over there is just completely different than the mainland. And it's great. It's a cool thing.
I thought the mountains were incredible when I went. I was like, dude, the ranges, how they look.
Well, dude, it goes
Jurassic
from sea
Park
to
is
freaking mountain, like 100 yards.
10,000 feet, Haleakala. That's the largest, or one of the largest inactive volcanoes in North America. And it actually, when you go to the summit up there and you look down, you're like, it gives you some humility for sure. They have hikes that go through the crater. It did quite a few years ago, and you go 10,000 feet to sea level, and that'll give you some culture.
Yeah, 10,000 feet's pretty high anyway.
Yeah.
We go hunting.
It's beautiful though.
5,000 feet, and it takes a couple of days to get adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great training. It's great training for the mountains. I came back here and I was like, oh, like this deal's actually pretty okay. I've been, doing most of this stuff at 5,000 feet. So
yeah, Mount Rainier is just another hill.
Yeah. Well, they make a big deal about that elevation in the NFL too. When they play in Denver, they go Mile High Stadium. It's different.
They get all messed
true.
up.
Yeah.
So let's get into the access deer. So you say it's getting close to the season, correct?
It is, yeah. They breed year round, but they do have a rut, and their rut is actually normally May to June, July, is the like prime time, as opposed to fall, back here on the mainland. They're just starting to shed their velvet out right now. They're actually, they're very interesting deer because they're more closely related to elk than deer, and they travel in herds. They have around a 220-day gestation period, so they can actually reproduce sometimes twice in a year.
Wow.
So their population growth, is huge. But, when that rut happens, it's an incredible thing. For the first time this last year, they have a very interesting call. It's not a bugle. It's not kind of a wheeze or anything like that. It's kind of this, I don't even know. You'll have to look up on YouTube or something, the call for it, but it's like this.
Actually, okay, there you go.
Yeah, a sound, but it's kind of like a roar almost.
Mm-hmm.
And
is it between like that and like a red stag?
Yeah, it is. It's a very unique sound, and they have a couple of sounds. They're very vocal deer in general.
Mm-hmm.
They have alarm calls, and their alarm calls are very similar to that, but they're very high pitched, and the does will make you for days. Like they see you and they start doing that, and you're like, oh, that's done. They busted me. But the roar that the bucks do, they start thrashing trees, and they start doing that. Last year was the first time that I was actually able to call one in from doing that. And
that is cool.
He came running, like he was on a mission, and I couldn't believe that he was actually. I'm like, and I didn't even use my voice. They have some calls that people have made out there, but I just tried to use my voice, and they're just, when they're rutted out like that, they don't really care. But I just was trying to do it to see if he would actually come, and he came.
Whatever made that sound's going down.
Yeah.
Going for it.
But they're they're really interesting species too, because I think it taught me, number one, that's how I cut my teeth. I've only ever harvested animals, really, archery. And I picked up a bow when I didn't I had no idea what I was doing. And at the time, it's somewhat self-taught. And then I also, had a little bit of guidance as well. But when I picked up that bow, I'm right-handed. And so they were like, oh, well, here's a right-handed bow. And I shot, and it was effective. And only within the last year did I figure out that I'm actually left eye dominant.
Oh, okay.
So
yep.
that's been a
going
fun
through that
adjustment.
with my kids.
Yeah.
They're like opposites. It's like, well,
yeah.
dang it.
You're like, oh, okay. So at some point, maybe, and I'm fairly ambidextrous, doing horse work as well. So, at some point I might pick up that left-handed bow, but, it was a lot of trial and error. And with those deer, they are very alert. They're native to India and Nepal.
Mm-hmm.
And their natural predator are tigers. And
geez.
Yeah, big cat. Big.
They are very, very darty animals.
Anything that moves, it's out of there.
Oh yeah. And they, their sense of smell is very good.
So that is weird.
And for sure.
So it'd be close to hunting a white-tailed deer, but can boogie like a pronghorn.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like
a
a cross between those two things.
An impala.
Yeah,
an impala,
because they're lighter too. They're smaller. Maybe get around 250 pounds, on the heavy end for a big buck.
Mm-hmm.
But those does are definitely smaller than that. And when they travel in the herds, that's one of the issues is there's so many eyes. It's
and they're all highly suspicious of any movement.
Oh yeah, for sure. So it's
why weren't you watching?
Yeah, you have your different methods of hunting, and I think, most of the success, I mean, I've done spot and stock too, but most of the success that I've had has predominantly been, I hesitate to say like tree stand because it's not, but I'll find like a cliff edge where I can be up above them and they'll come down through like a corridor.
It's like an ambush style.
Yeah, exactly. And then they don't really see you before, during, or after. And
I wouldn't call that tree stand hunting because you're not just, walking slowly to your tree stand, drinking your coffee.
No, it makes you
no stereotypes.
Yeah, sorry for the tree stand hunters.
People like that.
Man. I've totally done that too. But yeah, you're right.
Hey, I've done it too, actually. It's not a method that I would recommend for people that have ADD like me, but
no. Oh my gosh, it's like your arm starts to itch, or your leg. You're like, why do I have this random scratch that I don't even know that I need to like scratch, but I do. It's like the leg starts to.
It's funny to see that these deer are so aware, like, 20 sets of eyes, all of them are on duty, full time, and you have to ambush hunt them from cliff edges.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, I don't know why I have like a vivid imagination or something. I'm thinking like Lord of the Flies here, when they were ambushing those pigs, you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was crazy, man. That's a good flick.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. So, which islands can you actually hunt the access deer from? Are all the islands open to it, or how does that work out?
So it's interesting. They actually started when they did the original introductions in 1867. King Kamehameha was gifted 3 males and 6 females. Right. And they were originally introduced to Maui in 1959. Now there are about 50 to 70,000 in Maui.
Jeez.
And so we're talking like population, massive expansion. And they also have them on Molokai, and they also have them on Lanai. The other islands, Big Island does not. They have mouflon sheep, and they have, some other species out there, but predominantly it's like Maui, Lanai, and Molokai. And, Oahu, not so much either. Like a lot of them will have pigs. Pigs seem to be one of the, more predominant things that are more widespread, but the deer just have really flourished being, on Maui and those other 2 islands. And they're all part of Maui County. And Lanai, it's interesting. Lanai actually has, the way that their hunt system is set up is to have a annual hunt where people put in for tags for it. And, then there's a ferry that goes out there and, you can go out, but, they've had this year should be interesting because they've had a bit more rain, but they've had a lot of drought conditions. And so there've been a lot of starvation and real big issues with those populations out there because it's very, very dry. And Maui's had some of the similar stuff with the exception that, is having more private land, and a lot of that will give them a little bit more forage, for the most part, but they're very destructive. And so that's kind of what starts the conundrum of issues with being able to hunt out there is they've got people that want to do it, but there's not a whole lot of public access. They have a couple of places on Maui specifically, and I guess that's probably where most of my knowledge is. But one of them, specifically up country, has been closed for a couple of years now. And, they're talking about reopening it, I believe, in the fall. But, beyond that, you either have to have private land access or, you're kind of in it to wait it out, I guess. And
so that's where
that's
you
hard
come in.
Yeah. So that's where I'm trying to like bridge that gap, and I think a lot of it for conservation too, where I can use it as an opportunity to teach people too about sustainability. Like, okay, you want to come hunt these things, but like, what can you do to help give back to the land? What can you do to like help utilize all of the animal, and there is a bit of a mentality on the island. A lot of people really like, those big bucks, and they are beautiful. Don't get me wrong. They are beautiful animals. At the same time, like subsistence lifestyle is, it's food, right? And you can't eat the antlers. So there's a big push to kind of try and, do doe derbies or, push having more consumption of doe meat, which by the way, is delicious.
Mhm.
It's very, very tender. I mean, in general, the axis deer are probably the best. I'm biased, but most people will say too, it's some of the best meat you'll ever have. I mean, it's so lean. It is very sweet. They're living off of guavas and
Flowers.
native grasses, and they're just they've got it.
Even Remy
good.
Warren was saying that the axis deer is just that's the ticket.
Well, as soon as you go to Hawaii and you land, you just smell the floral smells of all these tropical plants. You're like,
it's just like you landed on top of a fruit.
Yeah,
it's true.
Like 30 of them. It's like a whole cornucopia of fruit over there.
Yeah, you just opened up a bag of Skittles, Starburst, or something. Like, oh my gosh,
that's
the
funny.
island has a way.
It's awesome. So, let's take a quick break.
Sure.
And come right back. We'll talk about the hunt when we get back.
Okay.
Get going.
Oh no, totally
good
fine.
to go.
So, going to Hawaii, I have a vision in my head of this access deer hunt. To me, it seems like there should be like a tribal elder, and you go through a smoke ceremony, and you honor the creature, right? And you like go through this whole thing, So, I've seen that on some shows, but it seems like that'd be an attractive feature if that was involved in honoring the animal. And just doing like the native thing. I'm not sure if that's even a Hawaii native thing, but it would be pretty cool to do.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting approach to it, because I think that's part of any sort of subsistence or like harvesting from the land out there. There is a lot of honor in it, and I think there's a lot of respect for that animal, like giving its life to you. And that's the way I felt like every animal that I've harvested there, like there was without a doubt a moment that animal was like, I provided myself for you to be able to harvest. And, and of course I'm kind of woo woo, I guess the way my friends call me, but, I do it like the sage and the, having the ability to really like sit with not even just like, it's the hunt for me is, it's like my church being out there. And I think that if you really are connected to the land and you're really connected to the people there, you understand the culture behind it. And I make a point whenever I harvest too, in Hawaiian culture, they have like aunties and uncles, and they're not, like by blood, but these are kind of like a tribe that have adopted me and vice versa. And so whenever I harvest, I always make a point of, giving some of the meat to, those like family members. Ohana is what they call it. That, I give that to the Ohana because, it's like I'm coming in as like, I mean, I'm not an outsider, but, I'm not born and raised there. And I do want to like be able to honor the space and, the animals and the people that are there. And so, my way of trying to like give back includes being able to do that, where I can share the bounty of the things that I have. And also I think that's where a lot of the like habitat restoration stuff comes in too, because, people really thrive on seeing you give. If you're willing to give back, that's huge. Plant natives or, like make meals. This last year that I've never made ceviche with deer before. I've done it with fish and such before, but I was gifted a recipe and, did all the lime and like, the herbs and all the stuff like that and made it out of the backstrap and it melts in your mouth. Like it was one of the most delectable things like I've ever eaten. And so I took some of that
lucky.
And I have oh my gosh, it's just like crazy. And I had some of that and I took it down to one of my aunties and she was like, oh man, like she was so grateful because they can't go hunt anymore, but they want to be able to enjoy the things. And so, as a way of being able to kind of like honor that animal. And, I always, I don't know where I learned this one, but whenever I harvest an animal, I'll always go like find a little bit of grass, like from where I harvest it and I'll like put it in the animal's mouth, after I harvest it. And, I've definitely got some pieces around it. And I think, that's like part of the hide tanning, I've done a bunch of different ways of tanning those hides. And, if you like using brain tanning, for example, if you do that, you're using so much of that meat and I'll cut up the bones and I'll give them to my friends for their dogs or keep them for, my animals or, all of these things that you can do to use it or like use the caul fat around all the organs and you make that around your meatballs and it adds extra fat for it. And it's like, it'll blow your mind, but you don't know those things unless they're like passed down or if you like hear them through the grapevine. So I think, if you're kind of honoring the animal, it's a pretty special thing.
Well, there's a lot of waste that does take place in harvesting an animal. A lot of times people don't mess with the organs and stuff. And then like typical, I guess your average hunter wouldn't be exposed to that stuff. You think about an organ and you're like, nope, no thanks. We've gotten more involved in that.
Definitely.
In the organs. And we started using all the hides. We started getting the hides tanned. We have a couple frozen now. But I had a deer. My buddy started this. He shot an elk and he had the whole hide done up. And he threw it over the back of a chair. And it was just the coolest thing. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that when I get the chance. So I shot this deer.
We started doing that. Because we're just going to have hides everywhere.
Eventually.
That's my life.
Well, one of our buddies, he made like a pair of moccasins out of a hide.
Which, you met Dustin.
Yeah,
he was the one that made the leather piece that was in the
that was really cool.
In the
that
frame.
Washington State piece. Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah. So they got along really well because she was like, oh, yeah, I started doing this and that. And I was like, oh, yeah, Dustin does all that stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't touched any of that yet. But, it's something that I would love to get into. So,
absolutely.
It's really cool.
And it's trial and error.
Yeah.
That's how it starts. Like, I had no idea. Thankfully, I had a girlfriend of mine that did a bunch of tanning, and she actually makes like Hawaiian saddles, like horse saddles and stuff, and does a lot of rawhide work and stuff. And she taught me because that first deer that I harvested, like I wanted to do something, but I didn't really know, and the hair started to slip, and I was like, "What do I do?" And she was like, "Bark tanning." And I was like, "Bark tanning? What does that even mean?" And she was like, "Oh, these wattle trees that are invasive, but they create really beautiful tannins." We took the hide and we put it in there for like 4 months. And in a tea, it's like a tea with all the bark in it. It turned out stunning. Like it is like this deep, rich mahogany color, and I like made a little plaque with it with the arrow that I got my first deer, and all the things.
Wow.
And I was like, this is really cool. Like I want to keep doing these things, and so you learn.
Cool.
You're like, well, some work, some don't.
That's awesome. So you're soaking these in that what's it called, a wattle tree?
Yeah, wattle bark. Yeah, so in the Pacific Northwest, they have like various different types of barks that you can use as well. But out there, up country, they have these wattle. It's like wattle wattle trees, and they have this like deep red brown color. And you take kind of like punky wood and you soak it, and you make teas. And like the more wood you put in it, the darker the tea. So you start lighter, and then and I told her, it's like. At that point, that first year, I wasn't sure if he was even going to be salvageable. And she's like, well, we're going to try it. And it turned out to be awesome. And I've made like a few leather bags and stuff out of it from it. And, have a few pieces like saved just because. And, then the other ones have like done some hair on tanning. But, in the process of making a tumbler and stuff now so that I can soften some of them. I've done it all by hand, and it's labor intensive.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I have so
Yeah.
many questions. I know that our conversation can go on forever just because there's
Yeah,
so many different little, like, I haven't even, the first part when you started, I had about 15 or 20 questions, and now I have even more. So I'm like, we could go through this. I can tell we're going to have another episode in the near future because there's a lot of things people need to know about you, and
Well, thank you.
all the things that Hawaii has to offer. Being that we've been there, I've been there one time 16 years ago. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And I said, the next time I go, I'm bringing back my bow. Because
absolutely.
they were shooting archery in the park, and I was like, I'm going to come down here and shoot by the ocean.
Yeah.
It's nice and warm. It smells good. They have like a little sign that says danger archery range. So they have a lot of self-accountability on that. And, I might just end up on an island on a cliff edge looking for an access gear.
It is. It's a pretty good gig. It'll change your life. It really will.
Well, before we go, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So, one, when does access deer season actually start? Like, how long is it? Like, what's the beginning and end?
Okay.
And then,
year round.
Wait, what? Is it really?
Year round. Yeah, year round.
It's then I must have read something completely wrong.
As what?
I must have read just when the rut was.
Well, no. So you probably read Lanai rules too, right? Because Lanai, even though it's part of Maui County, they have specific rules for the hunt on that other island. But Maui, any deer, anytime.
Holy smokes.
They are literally basically begging people to come.
All right.
Take them because they're
all you gotta do is ask me. I'll go. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Beg me, please. That's awesome.
And then, if we wanted to book something through you, how do we go about doing that?
Yeah, so that's the part that I'm, in the infancy stages right now of working on, because what happened was, I basically started talking to landowners, and that's how I kind of got access to be able to go out to some of these properties to hunt. And a lot of it is, it's like this responsibility and ethics, and like you create a rapport and all this and that. And I'm like, how can I take this and transfer it? Because, there are guide services, but that's a barrier because they're very expensive, and people want to come out and they're like, I don't have several $1,000s to just come like spend on, a hunt to come out here. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm working on right now is establishing a set of landowners, and hunters who will like have a set of ethics to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to go hunt. This is what I want to go hunt, and be able to make those connections, because there are outfitters, like I know there's several like on Molokai as well, that you can probably pay, a few $100s or I mean, I don't know like specifically, but, I've heard from people that you can, and I don't know anything about those per se. I just kind of am trying to think of it in a bit more like broad scale, like to make it more available for people to be able to come hunt and to do it in a way where, conservation is in the forefront because we want to be able to give back to that land. So it's not just like extraction. And, and so I do have like, some friends that are guides and such, but right now, for them, it's like cost prohibitive, right? Like they have to charge X amount to be able to do this because they're trying to put food on their table too. So I'm trying to, that's like the project right now is really working to establish, this community where people can be able to come hunt. They can give back. The landowners feel good because they're not having as much crop damage and, land like erosion and all these other like, byproducts of having the deer there. And it's got a lot of nuanced pieces to it for sure. There are a lot of moving pieces for it. And that's kind of, it's hard because I get people like contacting me wanting to come out and do that. And I want to be able to like provide that in a way that says, okay, this is like how you can come do this. Yeah. So it's kind of, it's in the initial stages right now.
Well, that's perfect. Then we're at the starting end of that as well. So whatever we can do to help you out and get this thing rolling and
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah,
definitely.
And you guys are doing like amazing things too. I think it's really cool to have, people that are, like either new to the industry or like figuring out through trial and error, like, you know what, we want to get more people involved. Like you're bringing your kids, you're like trying to, you're trying to like involve other people. And I think that's a really good thing because the community, I think a lot of it is people have questions that they don't really know, they want to get involved, but they don't really know how to do it. And, avenues like you have are a really good thing to be able to get it out there. So
well,
it's a good thing.
We humbly try.
Yeah.
It's like, we have our stumbles and things. We're figuring this whole deal out, as you've seen in this episode, we have another thing to add to our check down as we start, so we figured that out today. And,
that's good.
We can help with the sustainability. I was involved in the Washington State program here, and they had the same issue with landowners and animal relations, and then crop damage and property damage, and all the other issues that come on with having large herds of animals or just an overabundance in an area. So it is important to make those relationships and then figure out how it works together. How can it work for them? How can it work for you and the environment at the same time? And so that's very important.
What do you think you learned from that experience?
You got 3 hours?
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's awesome.
It will we can cover that in a whole.
Yeah, cool. Because that's exactly it, though, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what people are talking about, is trying to figure out what these nuanced pieces were that, create an environment where it's going to help the landowner, it's going to help the hunter, it's going to help conservation, right? Because that's what we need. Is we need the land.
I'll tell you what,
we need the animals, we need the habitat.
What we did one time, we went hunting in eastern Washington, and we weren't having a lot of luck, and we saw this property. And we saw a lot of deer trails going through there. And then we just went and knocked on the door, talked to the lady. And she was like, oh, yeah, you guys can hunt here. And so we went there, and Dave actually tagged a deer there. We'll post a video on Instagram. Awesome. I still have the video. And then, cool. But we ended up chopping so much firewood for her. It was like,
yes.
We did a lot of stuff for her. Her husband was in bad shape.
Yeah.
And it was an older couple. And we spent like a whole afternoon into the evening cutting firewood and doing some farm chores around her property. So
I bet they were so grateful too.
Oh yeah,
there was 4 of us too. So they probably got 20 hours of labor, and we were hustling. I mean, it was like so they got 20 hours of good labor. Not the
and you got a deer out of the deal.
Yep, that's right.
That's good. That's winter's worth of or at least start of winter's worth of meat right there.
Yep,
every bit counts.
Well, we made a relationship too. Did you go back over there? Okay, so I have a flooring company, and we ended up going back there in that following like October, like 2 months later, and installed a bunch of hardwood in her kitchen and stuff. I think I did it for like $100. But it was like $200 worth of gas to go there, So it was definitely not something that was a financial consideration. But I knew that she needed it, and during that time, since hunting season till then, her husband had passed.
Yeah,
so it was one of those things where I was like, well, let me do something for you, and so that worked out good. And she's super nice,
Well, it just makes you feel good.
It's been a couple of years,
that's exactly.
But that one awesome. You guys learned to work together. Is there a difference, do you think, between the scent, or if you were to just train a dog for access antlers, would they run into the woods and find a black-tailed antler the same, or would you have to have that mix of smell?
That's an interesting thing. Like, I think, this season, what my goal is to do too is like kind of to be able to get them out into the wild to do it, is to go search and find some antlers. And then before I touch them or anything, right, and like contaminate them with scent, like stand back for a bit and kind of put him on that, and get him searched. Like he knows now if I tell him, search, find your antler, like he will immediately go to work and like find what's around him. And I think as soon as I can associate that with him, it won't matter what type it is. I think he's smart enough to know like, okay, this is the thing. And if I get him on it a few times and he has success, I think that's how you really like build confidence in them too, because they're like, oh, okay, this is what you're asking for. This is what the goal is, Now he's got his full teeth, right? His adult teeth. So he can actually like pick them up and bring them to me. When he was a puppy, he's like, these are kind of heavy. I can't really, I'm trying.
It's always cute when they lose that little baby tooth and it's like right where you can see it. You're like, oh, there's a little tooth came out of there.
Yep. We found several of them.
That's awesome. Well, before we get going, where can people find you?
Yeah. So for Axis, my Instagram is axis_sustainability. And I post there pretty often. I'm working on the Axis site right now. And then for Mountain Wanderess Designs, which is all the leather work, it's mountain.wanderess, WANDERESS or mountainwanderess.com. That's where all the products are listed for sale and such as well.
Nice.
And email axissustainability@gmail.
Sweet.
And yeah.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate having you on today. It's been a
thank
pleasure.
you guys.
We have so much more to talk about. It's crazy.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to be in contact.
Of course.
And have you on. Yeah, quite a few times because we can talk all day about this.
I'd be thrilled to.
And what an
and
exciting mission.
Definitely.
What you're working on is very inspiring and something that we all need. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you guys got turkey season coming up too.
Yep. Couple weeks.
Soon.
We can't wait.
Yep.
I think Dave's leaving tomorrow to do some scouting.
The road is closed.
Oh, okay. Well, scratch that.
Yep.
Fishing it is.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys so much for the time too, and I look forward to talking more and seeing how the season progresses for all of us. And thank you again.
No problem.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, hang on. She hung up.
Yep. All right, everybody. That is our episode. Hopefully you liked what we have going on here. Dave, you're on 2 screens now.
Yeah, I got to cut this thing off. See my face? Where am I looking? Nobody knows.
But, So we are continuing our turkey giveaway. So look for it on Instagram and YouTube and on Facebook. And we'll be giving away a 3-pack of Phelps game calls. But that is our episode for tonight. So, yeah, everybody, have a good one.
Good night, everybody.